Now, as we've previously reported, UNRWA, or the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, launching a probe into 10 members of staff over accusations of anti-Semitism, anti-Israel or anti-Jewish bias, and or incitement to violence. But this is less than half of the names given focus in a recent report by monitoring group UNWatch. And it's less than a tenth of the greater list of names sampled at the end of UNWatch's damning publication. So what outcomes, if any, can we expect to see in the coming weeks and months from UNRWA, and will it be enough to correct the issue? Joining me to discuss, Executive Director of UNWatch, Hillel Neuer. Hillel, thank you so much for being with us. Now, first, UNRWA announced their probe saying that they're looking into the allegations despite UNWatch's, quote, deep history of unfounded and politically driven assertions against UNRWA. How do you respond?
Well, look, on the one hand, we welcome the fact that we have a very rare concession on the part of UNRWA that they're investigating their own teachers and other staffers for anti-Semitism, incitement against Israel, support for terrorism. We identified teachers who publicly praise Hitler on their Facebook pages, not one, but several UNRWA teachers. Those posts get liked and shared by other of their UNRWA colleagues. So this is really a widespread plague. I would say it's a pandemic of hate and incitement that has infected the UNRWA staff. And we have a rare concession where UNRWA, several days after our report, acknowledged that at least 10 are now being investigated. Now, as you said, it's a drop in the bucket. We identified 22 new names of perpetrators of incitement, but our list has more than 100 names of people we've identified over the past 5-6 years. And these people are known to UNRWA. And our question is, to UNRWA, is a single one of these teachers of hate who praise Hitler, who praise Hamas terrorist attacks, who spread conspiracy theories that the Jews created the coronavirus and are trying to destroy the world, has any one of these teachers been fired? And the answer, UNRWA's statement is attacking UNWatch. They say bad things about us. They don't cite any supporting material. It clearly seems that they're lashing out because it's as a reflexive, defensive posture, but they don't say that they've fired a single teacher. And instead, what we have is a position by UNRWA that some of the teachers, they say, may have received a financial penalty, some may have been censured. Well, that's not good enough. UNRWA and the US government, which is now giving $318 million to UNRWA per year, the United States is saying that UNRWA promised zero tolerance. Zero tolerance means if you have a racist teacher, if you have a teacher that supports terrorism, any school that has zero tolerance, you fire that teacher. You pull that teacher out of the classroom. UNRWA is not doing that, the opposite. They are continuing to employ these teachers. And so our question is to the United States, to the UK, Germany, Canada, the other major democracies. Virtually all of them are giving UNRWA tens, if not more than hundreds of millions of dollars. Why are we funding teachers of hate?
So UNRWA's statement says that they'll be investigating to determine, quote, if any of these 10 persons out of more than 28,000 personnel violated the agency's policies, end quote. Your position is that this is a gross underestimating of the issue then. How bad is it?
Absolutely. UNRWA's statement tries to portray the problem as a drop in the bucket. Our list has more than 100 names. These are just people whose Facebook pages we were able to see because they have privacy settings that allow anyone to see them, and people that we were able to identify because they said they work at UNRWA. We suspect, based on what we've seen, we have 113 names, but we had a principal in Lebanon who praised Hitler, and you had other UNRWA colleagues, liking that post, sharing it, commenting on it, praising it. Everything that we're seeing is that this is a widespread pandemic of hate that has infected the UNRWA faculty. And the question for UNRWA is, are they looking? Are they vetting? They're just going by the handful of names that we've had. We found 113 names on our list. We think that there are hundreds more. We suspect there are hundreds more who are perpetrating this kind of incitement. UNRWA is burying its head in the sand to suggest that this is anything less.
So is there any difference between the 10 individuals that UNRWA is investigating and the remaining 12 or even 100 that you've mentioned in Appendix A of the report?
Well, UNRWA doesn't share with us their methodology of who they acknowledge should be investigated and who shouldn't. They say certain people don't work for UNRWA, or they say certain people didn't work for UNRWA at the time of the reported incident. That's what their statement refers to, at the time of the reported incident, meaning if someone a year ago or 2 years ago praised terrorism and Hitler and anti-Semitism, but wasn't working for UNRWA at that time, then it's okay. No, it's not okay. You have a teacher in your classroom or a school principal or some other employee who likes the Nazis. They shouldn't be in your school. So we don't have from UNRWA any methodology. Their statements are all vague, non-specific, even though the perpetrators were public. We found them because these were publicly available posts. UNRWA should, as a minimum form of transparency and accountability, should tell us which perpetrators they are not going to investigate because they say they don't work for UNRWA or some other reason. We don't have any of that information from UNRWA. So UNRWA is failing to provide minimum level of public accountability, transparency to us. You know, I'm a taxpayer here in Switzerland, and Switzerland is giving tens of millions of dollars. Taxpayers around the world, the US, European Commission, UK, are giving all this money, and UNRWA is not giving minimum accountability or transparency.
Now, this is not the first damning report against UNRWA and its educational staff. It's not even the first really by UNWatch. What was the outcome after those reports? Was there anything?
I would say the similar reaction was lashing out. We had a major articles reported, major stories reported in newspapers such as Bild, which is Germany's highest circulation newspaper, and leading Swiss newspapers, Basler Zeitung, and others. And UNRWA's reaction at the time, their former spokesman was Chris Gunnis. He lashed out at UNWatch. He attacked UNWatch on Twitter. He said, who's financing UNWatch? So their reaction was ad hominem attacks against an organization. They're trying to kill the messenger, when at the end of the day, they are forced to acknowledge that there is a problem. So there is a pattern of UNRWA trying to deny there's a problem, try to kill the messenger, in this case, UNWatch. At the same time, there were some indirect admissions that they disciplined certain people. But again, what we're asking for is very clear. They have to remove teachers of hate. UNRWA is saying they won't do that. And my question is to the US government, Secretary Blinken, if you say zero tolerance, how can you allow UNRWA to keep on their faculty teachers of hate?
So what can be done independently of UNRWA? And I know you touched on this earlier, if UNRWA is unwilling or incapable of addressing the issue.
It's the donor states. The United States is giving $318 million. Germany last year gave more than $200 million. The UK typically gives more than $100 million. European Commission somewhere in the area of $150 million. So all of the major democracies are funding UNRWA. They are responsible for handling this. And if they're giving that money, and we haven't called to defund UNRWA, many people do. We didn't call for that in our report. We're asking for accountability. But if our member states, if our governments cannot guarantee minimum protections for Palestinian children who are being brainwashed with hate and poison and Nazi terrorist ideas, if our member states can't guarantee that minimum form of protection, then we shouldn't be paying for UNRWA at all. The US Congress will have to draw its conclusions because they're the ones who are approving that $318 million. Well,
so yeah, I wanted to ask as a follow-up really, what nations are defunding or otherwise punishing UNRWA? Are there any?
Generally not. Well, the US under the Trump administration did pull the funding. It didn't change things because the US came back, they gave the money back to UNRWA. So we'd like to see serious changes at UNRWA. There are major problems at UNRWA. You know, a core problem that we don't talk about in this report is the fact that UNRWA is dedicated to the idea of returning Palestinians into what is today sovereign Israel, which means the undoing of Israel, rather than tell Palestinians to try to settle them, whether it's in Gaza or anywhere else. So there are major problems at UNRWA. We don't address these in our report. Our report looks at one specific thing, which is incitement. But it's really, the question goes to our governments, to our legislatures. Why are we funding teachers of hate? And if we can't stop it, then we shouldn't fund them.
All right, Hillel Neuer, thank you so much.